Cavalier faithful, welcome back on into the Cleveland Pulse YouTube channel. I just have to get some Cavs thoughts off my chest here. To preface the video, I do not believe that firing the head coach, JB, hiring a new head coach, and running it back with the same exact roster composition or very similar is a viable strategy. I do not think that that is going to get the job done when it comes to the Cavaliers being a championship level contender in the Eastern Conference in the NBA. So, what else has to happen? It really only revolves around two players this offseason. Well, three. Donovan Mitchell has to extend, and I will say this openly, and I will continue to say this. Donovan Mitchell signing an extension is not a long-term commitment. People make this mistake in the NBA. It's a prerequisite for us to go where we want to go, but I promise you, he is not going to sit around and still be a first, second round playoff exit, regardless if he signs the dotted line or not. He could sign a 4-year max extension. We could pay him out the most that we owe him. If we go another year of not making it past the second round, do you think he's going to be thrilled about that? Do you think he's going to be disgruntled? Do you think he might even ask for a trade? Just think about that when you're saying, oh, the Donovan Mitchell extension. And it'll be exciting if it happens. And at this point, it's looking very probable, but it's not the end-all be-all in the situation. There's still some work to be done with this roster moving forward. Darius Garland, let's talk about him. People bring up the point that you would be selling low on Darius Garland because he just had, not a very good season, very below average to his standards and specifically what we paid him for. Here's my counter to that. If you believe Donovan Mitchell should return, which I think is the consensus and I think is the smart opinion, will Darius Garland ever reach max player potential? Yes or no? Answer that really quickly in your head. Will Darius Garland ever reach max player potential with Donovan Mitchell, them both being starters? I think it's a very high probability that that's a no. I'm not saying DG can't be a good player again. He could be a good supporting point guard. He's not going to be the guy if Donovan Mitchell's in town. End of story. That's pretty simple. So do you go ahead and trade him? This is where my issues start. Maybe he asked for a trade. Okay, we'll have to explore those options too. Let's say you want to move him. Unfortunately, all the trades that I've seen and a lot of what I've heard, you really can't move Darius Garland without moving Jarrett Allen and vice versa. And those are the three players that I'm talking about. Donovan signs the extension. Darius is on the trade block. Allen's on the trade block. You see what you can get back for them. That's not even regarding the head coach, which still needs to be sorted out. Obviously, we're going to be talking about that as well in these upcoming weeks leading up to the draft. So another question I have is why are we so connected with New Orleans? And I understand that that's a viable business partner just because of some of the guys on their roster, but it seems like a lot of trades I see with DG are to New Orleans. Some trades I see with Jarrett Allen are to New Orleans. Very, very interesting there that they could be in position to make offers for two of our starters. Seems pretty rare and like it doesn't happen a whole lot. So Darius Garland making some sort of trade happen as far as Brandon Ingram type of move. I understand a lot of people are not high on him. I don't even know how to feel about that because I don't think that he's the move. Like, I don't think that that's the sole thing you could do in the offseason, even if they did add Brandon Ingram and you swapped him for DG. I don't think that that propels us that much further. So I agree with a lot of people there. But if DG asks for a trade, if you don't think you could get the maximum amount of play value from DG based on his contract, then you have to explore some options. I've done some other things in the trade machine. I know that people think that Darius Garland's value is wide-ranging. That's a huge issue. Some people might value him really high. Some people might say he's really low value. The Cavs might just have to move on from him, especially if you request a trade. That's why it's almost like maybe you do kind of look now. Maybe you get verbal assurances from Don. Hey, we're going to move on from DG. You're going to sign this extension, Supermax. Nothing leaks yet. Keep that behind closed doors. Then you go for a Garland trade before his agents at Clutch Sports come out and say, well, you just gave Donovan a max. We need our client to go somewhere and really excel. It's a lot of strategy. It's a lot of behind closed doors this offseason, in my opinion. So, interestingly enough, and just be respectful with the opinions. A lot of people are going to have, thoughts on this, but my personal favorite move for DG would be to get Minnesota involved, and you have a Darius Garland center trade, sending him to Minnesota, and somehow we get Carl Anthony Towns in return. I think you'd have to throw in another piece for them. I think you'd have to give them a Dean Wade or a George Niang type of salary type of player, but that's the root of the issue. If you trade for a big, let's say you go out and you trade for somebody to complement next to Mobley. You have to trade Allen. You cannot, unless you want to put Allen on the bench. I don't think that's a reality. I don't think that's a possibility. But if you moving for a 3, I still think you have issues because you have to figure out if Donovan is going to run the 1, if he wants to, if you think that's a viable long-term strategy. Me personally, I don't really think it is, just because of his play style. I feel like he's too ball dominant to be a 1. And I know that doesn't really make any sense because he's going to have the ball in his hands anyway, but that's half of the point. I don't really think Donovan can run the 1 for long-term all season long, my opinion. So you have to go on the market. You have to get a 1 free agency, maybe another trade. But here's what I keep coming back to, and I have this written down here. Essentially, we have to do this. If you're the front office, you're Kobe Altman, this is your question of the offseason. And I think that this boils it down to a really baseline level that makes it a lot simpler of an offseason than people are turning it out to be. And I get it. It's not going to be easy, but I think that the core moves are a lot simpler than people think if you ask this question. You have to make a bet. Would you bet on Jared Allen moving forward, or would you bet on Evan Mobley moving forward? That's it. It's as simple as that, guys. And you hear these are rumors from Sam Amico, from HoopsWire, from a lot of other people. Well, Cleveland Cavaliers are going to come to the table and give Mobley a max contract this offseason. Cool. Perfectly fine with it. Absolutely would have no issue with it. He's a defensive stud for being so young. We've seen flash of his offense. Guys, at the end of the day, you might have an argument for one more season of Mobley and Allen if you give Mobley the max extension, but I don't know why you're delaying the inevitable unless you, in your heart of hearts, think that they could coexist and work together. And I don't think a lot of people are there, because if you give Mobley the extension, just trade Allen. And that's the tricky part, because what's Allen's value? Who's going to be interested in him? I think that he could fit a lot of, needs for teams around the league, but it's what you get back at the end of the day. Unfortunately, the way this roster has been built, the way the storylines have been developed, and the way that Donovan Mitchell is the centerpiece of it all, you are not going to get max value for Garland or Allen, in my opinion. Maybe some team will give you a really, really good deal that you think's a 9 out of 10, and it's a handshake and we'll go. You're not going to have someone overpay for Garland, who just had a bad year. You're not going to have another team overpay for a Jared Allen, even though his skill set is very transferable. A lot of teams could use it, especially teams that aren't very big, especially teams that have a 3 and a 4 that could shoot. A lot of teams are going to be interested in that, but there's character flaws to both of these guys. Allen, we've seen a struggle in the playoffs a year ago against the Knicks. This year has an injury and, doesn't really have a whole lot of impact after that. He played good before that, and I think he had a good year. But you have to find a suitable trade partner. You have to find a good deal that you're not getting totally fleeced. But just something to think about here, a little bit of a shorter upload. Or you just think that we could run it back and you could make Mobley and Allen work even if you trade DG. I think that's a really small percentage. I think that running it back with this core 4 in the same similar roster is really could be a mistake looking back on it. So just want to hear what you guys think. Let me know in the comments below. What is your favorite trade for a guy like Garland, for a guy like Allen? Are you 100% sold that Mitchell is going to sign that extension? And yeah, we'll see how it unfolds, and we'll see how the rest of this offseason goes. But with that all being said, appreciate you guys watching the video. See you in the next one. Peace.